see, I guess, Rio. No, actually, it's a very timely conversation and a very timely panel because also with Tim Bredbury, former footballer, now into the business of connecting the world through sports. Actually, I learned that he was an early entrepreneur into what we're about to discuss. So, I'll let you kind of introduce your project, but it took courage at the first time. So, understanding the global power of football, you being a footballer in the UK and many places, and coming here to try to build a platform. In that era, and for the youngins, maybe it's what we now call Web 1.0, right? Which was completely unidirectional. We are now Web 3, although there's people still trying to figure it out. But Rio, besides a magnificent footballer and star, was also one of the pioneers in terms of embracing what 2.0 was, which actually moved athletes from that unidirectional spotlight to being the subject of the conversation to be actually protagonists. So maybe we can start there because the entrepreneurial journey of Rio in that regard, in terms of media, I think it's quite fascinating, and I'll let you tell the story of how Five became to be, and now what Rio Ferdinand presents is, and we take it from there and have a wider conversation.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for having us. The World Football Summit and the guys behind the scenes have taken great care of us, so thank you. Yeah, well, when you're playing professional football, it's very difficult to find time to focus on something else. But I was very always quite an inquisitive mind. When I was a kid, from my background, you would never expect a kid from where I'm from to do gymnastics or ballet. But because I was so inquisitive, I was always thinking outside the box in a little way. Sometimes it could get you in trouble, but it was just always took me somewhere different. And I made a conscious effort when I was playing football. All I wanted to do was win. Everything was driven towards winning and being successful with Manchester United and my team. And when I got to a point where I was comfortable that I could close my eyes and my week would just run normally, because I knew exactly how I needed to get fit, how I needed to get focused, how I needed to concentrate, how I needed to go and get myself in the best possible condition to get a result. That's when I started to explore and be inquisitive again, looking outside of just football. So at that time, I started a restaurant, which was there in the end for 15 years. To be fair, a funny story, when I got a restaurant, Sir Alex Ferguson found out, and David Gill, the CEO. Now you can imagine they wasn't very happy, because one of their players is in a restaurant, it's starting in the city centre. They're expecting he's going to be out late maybe. So he called me in the office and said, "Rio, what the hell are you doing with a restaurant? You're a footballer." I said, "Boss, if you're going to give me a contract when I retire for 20 years, I'll stop the restaurant and I'll stop my interest outside. But if not, I'm sorry. Also, are we winning?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, boss, that's good then." And then he was fine. To be fair, it was okay. But I think the most important thing is the focus. If you can remain focused on what you're doing and it doesn't take you away from your primary objective, which is to win, then nobody can point the finger. And I was always of the mindset, as long as I'm winning, as long as I'm playing well, as long as I'm consistent, and all the things don't change, I feel comfortable to explore. And then that's where we started Five, which was a digital online magazine. How many years ago is that now?
It was 09, right?
09, yeah, about 09. And we won some great awards for kind of being best in play and first to move in that market. And then I quickly started understanding media a bit more, honing my skills as a presenter, meeting all these great people. My first interview was 50 Cent. Like, that's a baptism of fire. I was sitting there thinking, shit, I've played in some big games, but I'm sitting interviewing 50 Cent. The next one's LeBron James. And I was like, shit, what's going on here? So it was just being in an uncomfortable position and trying to get myself as comfortable as possible. That needed time. And then roll forward now, and we have a media company, Rio Ferdinand Presents, And it's the evolvement of technology means that it's changed from a magazine, digital online magazine, to being more of a media company that has very many different propositions, where straight to consumer, obviously, but also B2B.
Yeah. Tim, I want to loop you in now because you know, that model in '09 is the son of a previous model, which was the player center portals, right? Give us a little bit more context of that, let's say, historical feat that you tried to pull off.
Sure. Well, I played for 20 years. I finished in '99, and as you do, you're looking for that next opportunity. And with a partner and myself, we went back to the UK and we started meeting a lot of the agents, talking about commercial rights here in Asia. Obviously, we're in Hong Kong. We're on the doorstep to China and this big market. So the discussion sort of went through a few meetings, and then one of the guys actually said, "So you guys heard about the internet?" I said, "Ooh, not really." So well, that's what you start looking at. It's websites for players. So then we came back to Hong Kong, reorganized, reset things, and then we set up this company called Sportsnet Global, which was basically a individual website. So we go and speak to Rio and basically say, "This is your website." We, at the time, had around about 12 different revenue streams for you. So you could do all sorts of signed autographs, signed merchandise, fan trips. There was even, I think Gmail was on the presentation at some stage as well. So it was a sort of finding, Sportsnet Global would aggregate and would hold all the content, and then we would find partners, for example, Sportsnet China, Sportsnet India, Malaysia, and if there was interest in your website in China, then Sportsnet China would take your website, translate it, advertising, all these sort of different revenue streams would come from that. So we got to a stage where we had around about 240 athletes signed. We had a valuation of $1 billion, but we hadn't really started anything. And you know, it was a going from sort of training 2 hours a day to literally 24 hours a day trying to get this thing off the ground. It was a great opportunity, great learning experience. Mistakes were made. The .com thing boomed and then went down the toilet. But you know, to be involved in that, and it comes back to that same thing, that content that people want, and it's as the television side gets bigger and bigger, and the interest is there. People want that, obviously, that connection. If you walk through here now, how many people are going to want to come and get something signed by you? So it was the early stages, but it was the same, I think, the same concept that we're talking about now.
Yeah, actually, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the, let's say, the businessman mindset and logic, right, behind those pivots and that evolution. But you mentioned something which was, you made sure as an athlete that you kept the important thing important. So the first thing always comes first. So it's your craft, you're playing, because in essence, that's the anchor for whatever you try to build around. If Rio is not succeeding and not performing at the higher level and is washed out of sports, you know, setting up a restaurant or setting up a media company becomes a little bit harder, if not, right? So in that regard, and looking to the reality of now, and we've seen pretty amazing things in the last 5 years alone. So the acceleration of media business is tremendous. We've seen what we were saying now, athletes as the focus of, you know, the sport, the news, usually getting ambushed by media with questions and whatnot, wanting them to own their narrative, so creating a platform in which not necessarily to, you know, fight back the system, but actually to give a perspective of the music that you like, the artists that you're friends with, and giving fans that perspective, which, you know, the footballing part they could get every weekend. But now it's a platform business. It's a matter of growth and reach. Tell us a little bit more of, let's say, the business fundamentals behind that pivot, that evolution that you made, if it was opportunistic or a slight chance of opportunity with, you know, reading the leaves and actually seeing where we're going.
No, I think it was just the timing of my career getting to the latter stages and social media becoming a very prominent kind of platform. And I just quickly saw that. I just thought about it as a fan. I just thought, if I'm a fan as a kid, what would I want from social media? I'd want more insight, I'd want more connectivity, I'd want to be able to see when the 90 minutes is finished, I want to see more. And I quickly understood that, and I adopted that immediately. And I was probably the first footballer in the UK to do that. And I remember the teammates and Sir Alex saying, "What is this Twitter? What is this? What are you doing?" And I just thought, when I retire, most people from sports, when they retire, everything just goes boom. Very, very few where their life maintained and they go on to be entrepreneurial and do some great things. But with social media, I could still be visible. I could still have connectivity. And if I have something to sell, I can do that as well. Can I make a business out of it? And all of them things are possible if you execute right. But then obviously you've got with a new platform, there's obviously going to be mistakes that can be made. And I think that's a hugely important thing. I was never really scared to make mistakes. If I make a mistake, even now, I go into many businesses, not all of them win and not all of them are successful. The intention's there, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. There's other stuff to do. It doesn't mean you're going to be on the floor and finished. But that understanding of being able to still connect, and I think that's one of the important things for me about, well, I've always had that connection with Asia. From the UK is so far. How am I going to speak to the fans who support us avidly, so passionately from this part of the world, or Africa? I can't get there every day. Now social media can get us there. So how am I going to talk to them? And then obviously then when you're building a team, it's making sure that you have the right pillars to stand by on a regular basis, consistent voice, showing up consistently in the same way, just as I would as a player. Those same traits apply, and they're just transferable to what I'm doing now in media.
Yeah. Another nugget there is, there are wins and learnings, and then you pick it up and go, right? So to go a little bit more into the platform, and in layman's terms, you can say that Rio Ferdinand Presents is a YouTube channel, but we are in the era of platform economics. So it's the persona of Rio Ferdinand, the access, and the perspective. You're also a pundit, and you actually, I think you have clear opinions on things, which is something that the audience always likes, right? If you look at other examples, and I think we've had recent news, MLB investing in Jumbo Media, which is YouTube-based platform content of things that fans consume almost obsessively. We've seen now the Bundesliga struck a deal with a content creator in the UK to broadcast their games.
Yep.
And because they did the math, and that was the fastest way to reach the audience and potentially evidently monetize that on that. If you will kind of describe the product that it is your platform in terms of the different perspectives, I know there are like 3 types of content that you kind of create around that, right?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing from our channel, which we pride ourselves on, is we live outside the 90 minutes. And I think a lot of the rights holders, they live inside the 90 minutes, which is great, and that's where I've lived for the last 30 years of my life. But I'm as interested, sometimes, if not more, about outside the 90 minutes, and that's where our media company come in, getting behind the scenes. I think if you haven't watched it yet, go and watch the Michael Owen interview we just done yesterday. It dropped yesterday. But it's a great example of what we're trying to achieve, and it's a perfect example. You're seeing Michael Owen, you're seeing a player in a light, in a way that you've never seen him before. The way they talk, their comfort, and it's because obviously I played the game, there's a trust element there. I'm not there to trip them up, I'm not there to get a news story, I'm there to make them feel comfortable and be the real guy that I know in the changing room. And the problem is a lot of the athletes, and that's where America and the American athletes are a big difference to athletes in other sports around the world. They understand media a lot more than us, they're further ahead. And that's where I want to try and unlock the game of football in terms of getting the players much more comfortable around the camera to be their authentic self. Talking in a way that I know they talk behind the scenes, and where they're going to be much more of a likable product, if you want to call the player the product, on screen, because obviously the players, they're taught to go into, after a game, in the press zone and react to an emotional moment in a game. You're always tight, you're always protecting yourself, you're protecting the next result, your team, your manager, you've got to answer to everybody, and they're never relaxed. And so the players you see in the press zones isn't really the guys that I know. And that's where I come in, and I feel is our niche to unlock that with these players. And that trust is there now. We've done the same with Cristiano, with Bex, now with Mike Wazza. We've got one with Wayne Rooney dropping. And this is the great thing. I've kind of stepped away from the normal media now, which is in the studio, and it feels like my shackles are off, and I'm going to be traveling around the world and going to these guys and in their rooms, in their houses, and talking real football.
Actually, it was to get a second question in, and probably you, Tim, can chime in as well, which is actually that balance between traditional media and new media. I mean, right now, everyone is competing for eyeballs, right? And everyone, especially the time of people, and what digital has, an advantage over traditional media is the lack of linearity. I can, press play in your channel, stop it, go do whatever, anything else, or watch it on a podcast, or listen to it on a podcast, or whatnot. But the industry, as it is designed still to be a traditional media-driven industry, although we're seeing signs of change, right? What will be your take on that, Tim, in terms of how to create that balance so there's no cannibalization between the two and kind of everything and everyone can thrive?
I think you look at, I've been married, 39 years. I think in the last couple of years I watched my first sports event with the wife, and that was Formula One. And all that came about was because of that Netflix behind the scenes. It basically made people real, and you could now sort of connect, whereas before you saw a helmet or a car speeding past and doing the race as it was. Whereas now this opportunity to go behind the scenes and to understand people. And again, I think there's a lot of debate going on now about obviously understanding people that they are athletes, they do, they compete, they have good games, bad games, but at the end of the day, everyone's human. They've got to, and I think making that connection is the real key to the success.
Mm. No, definitely. I think it's, I think both can live together, and I think both can complement one another. The live football, I think, needs the access behind the scenes, and if there's the problem that the old media has is the trust. Is like, I'm in the media now. I want to be in a change room. Yeah. I want to see what the manager's saying. I want more. When I was there, like the players are now, your hand is against the door. So who is the bridge? Who can be the bridge? And that's where I want to step in and be that bridge. And there's also going to be different ways in which I think the media, the new media is used as well. For instance, even we're doing a lot of now where commercial companies will come to us for access with a player to unlock that player for an advertising campaign, because they know that the relationship, the trust, the conversations may be a bit more authentic. So it works both ways. It's just about, I think, embracing that both can live together if used in the right way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, you mentioned there and a little bit before in terms of how different the subjects are from what we see or what we are portrayed they are compared to who they really are. So authenticity, right, which is kind of the center of any good marketing. That authenticity, you think that is the absolute driver for great monetization in terms of that's how brands are really responding well to this new way of media?
Yeah, I think authenticity is the king, and that's the longevity as well. I think because at some point bullshit will be seen, and it will be called, and you'll be left. And I think it's always the case. And I think that there's so many examples. I think you look at the brightest young talent on the planet in football is Lamine Yamal. This kid is authentic. He's him. And the old media and the older generation sometimes don't like how he is, but he's just being him. And I love it. And all of his generation understand it. So we need to get with the times with these guys, because otherwise you're going to get left behind. And I think the brands are starting to understand as well, like it's this authentic behavior and this nodding and appreciating culture and embracing it rather than shying away and trying to be this straight, perfect human being that no one on the planet isn't realistic and isn't real.
Well, let's approach the last stretch of the conversation, thinking about the athletes as platforms. I mean, next year is going to be a momentous year for football. So World Cup, arguably the biggest media market on the planet, the biggest hospitality market on the planet. I know Connexus is the official hospitality partner for the Greater China region. So if you have, and this is kind of a challenge question, right? But if you have athletes to either plug selling travel packages or broadcasting games, how would you go about it? Because the one thing that I see is with the growth of this type of platform mentality, and I think we saw that in other examples. I'm bringing back, I think there was a paddle tournament in Saudi Arabia that was broadcasted globally through Cristiano Ronaldo's channel, which, there's no media platform in the world that can top that, right? So how would you propose that even athletes, or since we have Rio here that has a platform already, approaches that great momentum, which is transcendental, into actually, serving a platform for greater commercialization? Start with you, Tim.
I mean, from our point of view, Connexus Travel, as I said, we've got the hospitality rights for next year. But we're looking at maybe sort of two different options with regards to, say, an ambassador type situation. So somebody that maybe will come and help us launch, and then will, again, I think that social media opportunity to basically keep the story going. There's going to be certain high points in December 7th. Obviously, it will be the draw for the World Cup. So then we'll know which city all the different teams will be. So again, just sort of marking those different dates out, having a social media conversation that's going around the World Cup, who's qualified, who hasn't, who's injured, who might not play, the matchups when the teams come together, through to us as a company being in a position to, from a hospitality point of view, would I like to see this guy at the World Cup finals and he's in the suites and meeting everybody and meet and greet? And that's where obviously that sort of corporate side of things, that branding sort of comes into play as well. So definitely very, very important for us as a company to have that ambassador relationship.
And how would you? What you would encourage players to approach, a moment like the World Cup, but from what they can bring to the game. They are protagonists, they are beloved, but what would you suggest them embrace, looking at how you build your platform and how you see the market going?
Well, the World Cup, as you said, is one of the biggest events in the calendar in the world. So you have to look at it as an opportunity to expand what you're doing, to get more eyeballs on what you're doing. And how are you going to stand out from the crowd? What are you going to do? Are you going to go and just be alongside a brand as an ambassador, or is that deal going to be just a transactional deal, or is there going to be an element of give and take within that deal that you do? Because they've got a database, these companies. How can I utilize that database? How can I tap into that as well? And I think that's where the players need to be sometimes a bit smarter. It's not just about a check. And that's the way I think I always talk to the younger players about things, is like, how can you get more involved in the fan culture that are going to be there for the long term and support you long term, rather than just a quick check and you go in and out.
All right. Well, I think that I couldn't ask any more clever questions to them. I wanted to thank Tim and evidently Rio for sharing this time and their perspective into the business, and thank you all for being in the room and being so good sports. So,
thank you, guys. Thank you. Can we do Q&A or not?